stiffer every day.
Lucky.
Oh, I don't know my notes, what the heck. 15th Air Force, 2nd Bomb Group, 49th Squadron. And I'll admit now I got a love affair for the B-17s. I was registered, as we all were, I think at one time or another, with a draft board. Mine was number 13. And I kind of figured that that didn't sound like a good number to be drafted under. So my brother-in-law, who was from South Dakota, said, why don't we join the Air Corps and go fight the war? So he came in town from South Dakota, and we got together and went down and enlisted in the Air Corps, and we took the usual tests that most of us here have taken. And I got it through both of them okay, the physical and the written one there. And they said, go home for a while, we'll let you know what we want to do with you. Well, I went home for a short period of time, and I was notified that I was to report out to what was known, I think at the time, as I recall, the Victory Airport out at, which is now the Blaine, out in that area there. We were to get 10 hours of instruction on flying, and that would give us an indication of whether we were qualified to go on in the program. I had my 10 hours out there, and I got through them okay. There was, I got average markings on from my instructor out there, with the exception of one mission, and I think it was about my 7th lesson. We were doing stalls and spins, and flying in Piper Cup, J3. And I was doing this, and I was coming around on my second spin coming down. The cowling came off the plane, banged off the windshield, and for a minute I thought the whole damn thing was going to fall apart on me. I found out later my instructor had marked on my sheet he was a little bit tense in this lesson. And rightfully so. My next mission after that, I think it was my 8th one, he said, oh, he's improved much better today. Anyhow, I got through that part of the training, said go home again. They were backed up in the training command. So after a short period of time in which I had a little argument with my landlord because he thought, what the hell am I doing home here? His son was in the service. He didn't even know I'd already been in for quite a while. Anyhow, I was told to report to the little garden spot known as Jefferson Barracks, Missouri. I won't comment too much about that down there, except I think I lost about 15, 20 pounds, plus my hair. And we were supposed to go to what was known as the CTD, the College Training Detachment, after that. Probably a lot of us here have also had that same training there. I was on a list to go to Georgia Tech, and the crew that was leaving just before that, or after that, was to go to the University of Minnesota. Well, as it turned out, there was quite a few of the student cadets down there turned up kind of sick. So it wound up that I didn't wind up at Georgia Tech. I lucked out. I got to come back to the University of Minnesota here in my hometown. And I was here, went through the normal training here, sneaked out a couple of nights from, we were bunked over at the stadium over there at the time there, and I could get out on weekends and get home. And by that time I'd been married a couple of months before I went in, so it worked out pretty good. From there we went out to Santa Ana, California, pre-flight out there. I was kind of impressed. We got in there about 2:30 in the morning, hadn't eaten for about, I don't know, the previous afternoon, the day before. And the colonel at the base out there came down, had breakfast made for us, and we wound up with a quart of orange juice and a very nice breakfast. And I thought it was kind of impressive that the Air Corps would have the colonel in charge of the base out there come down and greet us and see that we got fed in that there. While at Santa Ana there, the normal program out there, a lot of calisthenics and stuff, and we worked out on the parade ground out there. Lots of moisture in the air out in California in the mornings. It didn't dry out there until about 11 o'clock, and we'd be doing push-ups and sit-ups out on the parade ground out there, and our tail end would get stuck in the blacktop out there. And anyhow, from there, I had to make a choice at that time whether I wanted to continue and to go to pilot training, or they were pressing us to get some volunteers for Bombardier and Navigator schools, which were running a little bit quicker in their program and more in need. At that time, pilot training had backed up quite a bit for most of the cadets out there, and there was rumors going around that the washout rate was getting kind of high because they had too many in the program at the time and were backed up way too far. So I volunteered for the Bombardier training, and that made me wind up in a gunnery training school. Prior to that was part of the training for Bombardiers, Kingman, Arizona. At Kingman, got through the program okay there. We had real nice weather there, except at night it got pretty cold down there, and I'd wind up sweating and in the swimming pool during the daytime sometime, and at night I'd be sleeping in my bunk with a full fur-lined flying jacket on there to keep warm. Out of Kingman, we went to Carlsbad, New Mexico for our Bombardier training there. Program I got through there okay, and graduated, got my wings, got my commission as a second Louis, and they said, well, you're going to go into transition training now and report over to Dyersburg, Tennessee. Well, at Dyersburg, we had our crew formed and made up over there, and took transition training there, which included air to ground and also bombing quite a bit there too. I recall one little incident in the air to ground there. It was a hot day and thermal currents, and we were getting bounced around pretty much on very low altitude air to ground training for the gunners and the crew there. We had been briefed that the gunnery range had to be strictly adhered to because there were one or two settlers in the backwoods off the end of the gunnery range that they didn't want to wind up in the obituary probably column with down there, but he come pretty close to it one day. One of our gunners kept firing a little bit shortly after he was supposed to cut off there, and we were using tracers, and I could see him coming along, and there was an outhouse out there and a little old cottage out in the woods out there, and out of the outhouse come an old woman with her pants down, bullets going along right side of her. He was going like this. I like to die laughing, but it could have had tragic consequences down there. So anyhow, the crew was formed there, and we were told to report to Lincoln, Nebraska, and we'd be assigned to our B-17 there and given our orders for overseas. We went to Lincoln, checked in, and wound up with a brand new B-17G, nice shiny one, and we had orders, top secret, I recall. I still got the envelope at home, not to be opened until we're up in the air to find out where we're going to go. And from there, when we got up and off the field there and opened them up and found out we were to go to Manchester, New Hampshire, and from there to Gander, Newfoundland, at which time we would be told which Air Force we were going to go to, the 15th or the 8th. At that time, I was still in doubt. I didn't know what I was going to go. I actually figured I'd be in the 8th Air Force for most of my training there because the numbers were greater on I am going to the Aids. Anyhow, I got up to Newfoundland up there, and the weather was lousy out over the ocean at that time. A lot of storms and that, so they held us on the ground there for a while. In fact, one night the storms were running pretty bad up there, and we had to get out in the plane out there and run the engines and keep heading the plane into the wind so it wouldn't get damage on the controls from wind shear and that. We finally got out of there, headed for the Azores, and this was my first experience over water, and I was kind of a question mark about our navigator to make sure we could find the Azores for us out there. It looked like a lot of water out there. Anyhow, we made it to the Azores. He homed in pretty good there, and I got my opinion of it a little improved at that time, because prior to that, he was a flight engineer. Didn't get a commission in his navigation school, and I kind of wondered at the time whether it was for not being the top navigator or something else, and it turned out a little bit later with, I found out he had a very high allergy against fighting in World War II. He just figured he couldn't kill anybody or shoot that 50 caliber machine gun in that, so I didn't find that out really until we got over to Italy over there, and we had a bit of a discussion, and he wound up out of our crew. I had told him if I was on that bomb site and on the run, I wanted him on that gun, and if we were getting fighter attacked there, and he frankly admitted he didn't know if he could shoot it and kill anybody. I said, well, we don't fly together then, so. Anyhow, from, I guess I left off here when we left the Azores there, we went over to North Africa to Marrakech. My experience there was that the English people knew how to, they were in charge of the air base at Marrakech there, the English, and they had red-jacketed waiters in the officers' club there and white tablecloths, and I thought, my God, this is quite a way to fight a war. But we had another experience there too. When we landed there and had the plane on the hard stand there, one of the officers there came out to greet us, and he says, draw a big circle around your plane and leave one of your enlisted men there. And I said, what's the purpose of that? He says, well, he says that the natives over there, he says, will steal you blind. And he says, we do this, we put a big circle around your plane there, and one of your men will sit right off the undercarriage of the plane with a 45 in his hand. And he says, the rest of you can go to the officers' club and the enlisted men's club and get settled in and get your meal before you have to take off again. So that's what we did. We cleared out of there, and we're headed to Italy, to Foggia. Manfredonia area there is also right by Foggia. Ambendorf was the airport there for our B-17 group. We flew over to Foggia, and we're talking to the tower at Amendola there, and I got clearance to land, and touched down, and we found out when we touched down on the runway down there that we were getting an escort of 2 truckloads of soldiers with their rifles all coming out and aimed at us. And what had happened there, we'd been talking to the proper tower, but we landed at the wrong field. There's about 40 of them over there, all in kind of close proximity over there, so they took a dim view of anybody not cleared for their field coming in and landing there. Anyhow, we got out of there with a few apologies and over to our own base there. Checked in there, got assigned to what was known as our hut. Kind of a sandstone block hut with a canvas top and a parachute lining on the inside of it there. And they were kind of passed on between the crews as they come and left over there. And I think I paid $50 for my corner of the hut, as I remember over there, and I always have said since then that I think I still got a piece of property over in Italy over there. We were given an orientation flight by a first lieutenant, and he was kind of a wild guy. I remember we were going to take off and get oriented down there because they figured if you landed at the wrong field right now, when you first come over, you better find out what the neighborhood looks like. So he took us out, and we buzzed around the area over there, and this guy this pilot that we were riding with there had been there for a period of time, had a number of missions in, and he had no love for the Italians. His idea of fun was to go out over the Adriatic, find a fishing boat there with big sails on it, come up on it, go right over the top, and let the prop wash lay the boat over in the water over there in the Adriatic. We did this one time. The Italians are on the boat going like this. We're just laughing at them over there. Anyhow, to get into my missions after that, we were started out, and I had to copy down what I had here in the way of missions. And I flew wing a few missions, get oriented, elements one time. And very shortly after that, I was drafted as a squadron lead bombardier, and then a couple of times after that, into the group lead. I had, believe it or not, 9 missions to Vienna, 1 Berlin mission, the only one that the 15th Air Force flew. The mission to Berlin, our second bomb group led the first group over the target on the Berlin mission that the 5th Wing flew that day. There was a lot of brass in the first plane, and I was flying as deputy group lead on the Berlin mission. And after we turned on the IP, we were getting hit with flak like crazy, and the Me-262s, the new German jet fighters, were up there after us up there. My first experience with the 262s. And just getting started into the bomb run, our lead plane got hit and had to leave the formation. They had their third engine, number 3, shot out, and we were told to take over. That elected me to be the group bombardier, lead bombardier, for the 1 Berlin mission that the 15th Air Force ever flew. It went off okay. We were bombing the Daimler-Benz tank works over there that day, and a little bit earlier this last few years here, I find out the Daimler-Benz tank, what was the Daimler-Benz tank company is now the Daimler-Benz Auto Company, bought out Chrysler Motor, and I kind of had a gut feeling, who in the heck won the war? Here's the Germans over there that were bombing, now they're buying us out. That mission went okay, other than for our lead plane, we did get an awful lot of damage in there, and I recall at the time that we hadn't any more than pulled off of the target. We're getting the rally point assembled up on the group there, and my colonel was Lieutenant Colonel Bevins at the time. He's on the radio to the navigator. He says he wanted to have an ETA to the Adriatic. I remember the navigator's remarks. He says, "Hell, Colonel," he says, "I got 4 sectionals to navigate over before I even find the Adriatic." So we came back, and out of 9 missions to Vienna, I got to the point where we'd have a briefing, and I'd say, "Well, you don't need to be briefed. You've been there so often. Go back and do it again." We were hitting the marshalling yards and oil refineries there, and I guess so I knew Vienna pretty good from the air. It was not a good target. As far as flak and fighter protection, Berlin was supposedly number 1, Vienna number 2. Blackhammer oil refinery up not too far from the Berlin area was number 3, maybe Munich number 4. And in retrospect on my missions, besides the one Berlin, I had 9 Vienna, I had 4 Blackhammer, and I had 1 Munich that was coordinated between the 8th and the 15th at one time over Munich. And I never seen so damn many planes in all my life as I've seen that they did there. Plus a lot of fighters in Type 2. Basically, the rest of my tours, I can't recall a lot of milk runs in there. I might have had a couple in there. We had one on the Po Valley where in northern Italy there to knock out a bridge there. And I recall that we were getting shot down at, not up at, by the anti-aircraft gun. And I always wondered why the Germans didn't put a 5th barrel on those 88s, because if they'd had, I wouldn't be here. I could see them bing, 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 and the 4th one was right off the nose. The last mission I flew was one called Apricot for a code name, and it was a squadron lead at that time because we couldn't drop as a group because the pattern would be too wide. It was in the northern part of Italy on a river up there with Mark Clark and the 5th Army on one side and the Germans on the other. And I got briefed that if I dropped on Mark Clark, I'd never go home. I'd keep going. But it worked out okay. And I finished my tour, hit 35. Was sent down to Naples to come back, and I would be assigned as an instructor, they said, when we come back, and I was anticipating a second tour in B-29s. In fact, by the time I got back, went down to Miami Beach. I had a loss of hearing from a couple of engines out that we dropped 10,000 feet there towards the end of my tour, and I had to keep my flight surgeon pretty well fixed up with my monthly and fifth of booze that we were getting over there, and he finally let me finish my tour, but it took a little inducement there. Wound up out of Midland, Texas out there, and from there, the war ended when I was out there in B-29s, getting ready to do another tour, and the war ended at that time, and that pretty well took care of my experiences over there.